It was okay. Sorry about that. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Um, and I so glad so many people are able to make it. Like to welcome Bill Flanagan and Megan MacGregor from the John Ball Zoo in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The John Ball Zoo has supported the Red Panda Network since 2017, and Bill and Megan were able to visit their headquarters in Nepal. We asked them to join us to tell us about their trip and the work of the Red Panda Network to protect, as Bill says, the most handsome mammal in existence. And I have to agree with that.
Yeah. Should we get started here? I think Megan's got some slides to share.
Joanne,
Okay.
if you're the host, could you make it possible for me to share my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Once I figure out how to do this, I'm kind of new
Yeah.
at this stuff.
No problem. It's a learning curve for all of us.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. I'll make you a co-host
Wonderful.
and see if I can make Bill a co-host too. Yep. There. Now you can share whatever you want to share with us.
Wonderful. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
You there you go. Perfect. Can you guys can hear me, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Excellent. So yeah, Megan and I wanted to talk about our trip to Nepal to connect with Red Panda Network and explore one of their zoo eco tours. So Megan is the development events manager at the John Ball Zoo, and I'm the conservation manager. And we've been kind of talking about ecotourism, and we've been supporting Red Panda Network. So we thought it was time to start trying to connect those two. So if you want to go to the first slide.
Absolutely.
So many of you are probably familiar with red pandas, but there are two different species actually. Here's a picture of the range from IUCN, but you can see they basically have a Himalayan distribution. This kind of follows the range of the Himalayas throughout Asia. So starting from the west and going east, you're in Nepal, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, and then that sort of northeast corner of the range, that little finger that sticks up, is in China, and that's actually a separate species, which is slightly larger and a little bit different colored. Ooh, good. That looks great. um, they're bamboo specialists, and their habitat are montane forests in the Himalayas. So there you go. So the conservation of red pandas, they are an endangered species. There's probably less than 10,000, which is kind of a fuzzy number because it's really hard to count them. And that's something that Red Panda Network is working on. But they've documented about approximately a 50% decline in the last 20 years. And the threats to them are the same. A lot of species where they're susceptible to habitat destruction and fragmentation, especially because they have such a specialized range. Climate change is going to be a big issue for them. You know, the habitat are that they're from is very damp, sort of temperate forests in the Himalayas. And as climate change impacts that area, those forests are going to get drier and warmer. They are a species that's exploited for the pet and fur trade. And then one of the things that a lot of biologists are worried about right now are introduced diseases. There are a lot of dogs and especially feral dogs that live in this area that have access to the same habitats as red pandas do. And then, of course, red pandas are susceptible to rabies and distemper, especially the same way that dogs are. This is a species that, as you guys are probably familiar with, the AZA zoos have worked with for many years. There's a species survival plan for this species, so that's our cooperative breeding program between AZA zoos. And here at the John Ball Zoo, what we've started working with red pandas in 2017. Keeping pandas on exhibit, it became one of our most popular exhibits. Our visitor surveys indicate that people like the red pandas is one of the exhibits that they like the most at the zoo. And we've been partnering with Red Panda Network since 2017. One of the things that I do as conservation manager is make sure that we're having a positive impact for animals in the field. So a lot of our really popular exhibits like lions and red pandas and chimpanzees, we try to find counterparts that are doing conservation for these species in the wild, so that when you come and visit the zoo and you support the zoo, you're actually supporting red panda conservation in the wild. Next slide, please. So many of you have probably heard of Red Panda Network before. They were established in 2007. They're a worldwide organization they have offices especially in Europe and North America. But their main office in Asia is in Kathmandu, Nepal, and they are very active in Nepal for red panda conservation. I think they are probably exemplary as far as being a community-based organization that does conservation. They focus their impact on forest protection and restoration, conservation education, and providing sustainable livelihoods for their partners in the field that share a habitat with red pandas. And then we've been supporting them from 2017, and we'll continue to support them. In 2017, we did a naming contest. It was the first time we ever did that for cubs that we had at the zoo. And all of that money went directly to Red Panda Network. And the two big projects that we support the most are Plant a Red Panda Home, which is one of their main restoration programs where they have nurseries all throughout the communities in the range of red pandas that are growing native plants and restoring forests. And then fuel efficient cooking stoves is another project that we've been donating money to. And the idea here is that they supply fuel efficient cooking stove to these villages that are sharing space with red pandas. And there's not a lot of electricity in some of these areas. So these families are very dependent on stoves and open fires for cooking and heating. And so these fuel efficient cooking stoves greatly reduce the amount of forest that's cut down to heat and feed themselves. And it also reduces the amount of smoke that they're inhaling in their homes. So it not only helps for red pandas and the other animals that live in these forests, it actually improves human health. So we decided we wanted to test out one of their eco trips to try and connect some of the conservation work we've been doing remotely directly with some of our visitors. So we thought that it would be a good idea to sort of test out and go out on the eco trip that Red Panda Network provides so that we can connect our donors to the work that we do for red pandas. Megan, did you want to talk a little bit more about eco trips?
Yeah, so some of you may be familiar with eco trips. They are things that some zoos have been doing for a long time and some are just getting into. For John Ball Zoo, it's something we're just starting to look into as an opportunity. But we, and myself specifically from the development team, focus on fundraising, focus on highlighting the important work that we do and how we can have our community support that both locally and nationally. And so from a development perspective, this was a really cool opportunity for us to see what this would be like from a donor's perspective. Could we feasibly use this as a trip to take future partners, future donors, future lifelong supporters on a trip and have them experience hands-on the animals that they're also seeing in the zoo? So day one, when we arrived, we came to Kathmandu. That was where we flew into. It did take us about 2 days to get just to Kathmandu. Our longest flight was 17 hours. So it was definitely some serious travel. And for anybody who hasn't been to Asia or kind of across the globe, it was a whole new experience for myself and Bill as well, but really exciting. Our first day in Kathmandu, we did a lot. It was a great day for exploring the Nepali culture and then also getting to know some of the Nepali guides that we would be with. We did have the opportunity to go to a few different UNESCO World Heritage sites, which I have some photos we'll show as well. But it was just an incredible opportunity to learn more. Not only we went with the mentality of focusing so much on red pandas and learning about conservation and biodiversity, that it was almost a surprise or an added benefit to learn so much about the Nepali culture as well. So on our trip, we had 7 total people who were from the community or guests on the trip. And then we also had 3 guides who helped us. So surprisingly, we had a wide range of people from different countries. There was 1 other American. There were 3 Dutch friends who came from the Netherlands, and then 1 individual who came from Bangladesh. And they all were people who weren't necessarily affiliated with zoos or aquariums, but were just passionate about either conservation, red pandas, biodiversity, supporting sustainable travel. So they were all there for a reason. They all had a care. And then from Red Panda Network, we had 3 guides who were with us as well, Naresh, Wangchu, and Prabeen. And they each had different areas within the Red Panda Network team that they were specifically involved with, but also were just a wealth of knowledge about red pandas in general, additional wildlife. In specific, Naresh was the bird expert. Him and Bill had the best time. And so, yeah, it was just a great opportunity to be able to learn from them as well. Continuing on day 1, we visited Bhaktapur, which was one of the UNESCO World Heritage sites, and it was built as a temple, and so it was a very cool experience to be able to see that. You can see some images there. We also got to see several traditional vendors. So on the left is somebody showing us the process of hand drawing, painting a mandala. And this is the image is a completed one, but they showed us each of the steps from creating the paper to creating the pigment that they use for the ink, to then drawing the sample or the design, and then filling it in, and then adding more detail and adding more detail. And it was genuinely incredible. And it was also interesting because it did tell the story of Buddha or Buddhism story. And so that was a very interesting opportunity to learn as well. And then on the right, you'll see Bill getting some healing on his knee. They called these healing bowls or singing bowls. And the vendor that we were able to see actually hand pound these bowls. And they make them in such a shape that when they then roll the mallet around it, it creates a song almost, or a tone that then gives off certain frequencies that are meant to heal. And so whether that's a physical constraint, a mental constraint, an emotional constraint, the understanding is that that same vibration that creates the sound also will create a healing vibration within your body. And it was just a very cool experience to be able to see. We also had the opportunity to pass by a coming of age ceremony in Bhaktapur. What we learned was that this is something that's traditional for young boys especially, but they did have girls that go through it as well. There isn't a specific age that they go through it. As you can see, there's a range of ages and little boys there, but when they were ready, they would come through this process, and it was a celebration. It was a great opportunity for the community to come around all of these kids and support them. They also, unbeknownst to us, did have some offerings of animals. They had a water buffalo calf, a goat, a chicken. I thought one more animal. Do you remember, Bill? There are 4 that they did ultimately slaughter. We weren't a part of that, but we came by afterwards. But we also learned that it wasn't just a sacrifice, but instead that food was then used, or that meat was then used for food, not only for the people at the celebration, but also for the rest of the community, and then even for the local animals as well. There were street dogs and things like that all ready to be supported as well. So it was a different than what we're used to, but very, very interesting experience. Similarly, excuse me, we got to go to another temple, Pashupatinath Hindu temples, and had a very cool opportunity to see a lot of rhesus monkeys, and just beautiful sculptures, temples, things like that. And at this location as well, they did show us a funeral ceremony. So again, very different than what we're used to in the US, but a great learning opportunity for us about their culture. They do their funerals right by the river. That is their most sacred and holy place. And so you can't see it, but just in front of both of these photos was the full river. And they do cremation ceremonies for all of their funerals. They also do them within, I think it was within 3 days of somebody dying. So it is a very quick process. It was a once in a lifetime sight, I would say, for that. It was a difficult thing to experience, but also very moving and very powerful. Bill, do you want to?
Yep. On day 2, we got up in the morning and flew to a town in the lowlands, and then started a long drive up to the village of Elam, which is in the Himalayas. It's kind of the jumping off point for the very eastern portion of Nepal, where we were active looking for red pandas. One of the really cool things about traveling in this region is that whenever you get into a plane, the Himalayas are just right out the window. So that picture was actually taken with a camera just pushed up against the window. So everywhere you go, you're kind of reminded that you're close to the Himalayas. So Alam is a really interesting town. It's where a lot of Red Panda work is kind of centered. They do a lot of what Red Panda Network does is focused on providing sustainable livelihoods for their partners in these communities that support red pandas. And the idea is to make sure that there's sustainable incomes there for those folks, so that keeping the forest intact benefits these communities. So we actually, while visiting Alam, we got to visit a tea store, and then we drove out to one of the factories where they actually grow the tea and make the tea, and did some really elaborate tea tasting, which was amazing.
26 different varieties of tea we tried in one afternoon.
Oh yeah. And they taught us how that they grade them, and then we all graded them, so that they were collecting data on that. So I think that everybody that visits there, they collect data on and use that for making the tour. One of the things I think we really enjoyed was we visited a rug factory. And then, so the rug factory is one of the really cool things that Red Panda Network does. It's a sustainable livelihood program that focuses on providing sustainable livelihood to women in these communities. They provide a flexible schedule. So for these women that have other responsibilities, and it's hard for them maybe to keep a 9-to-5 job, they manage to keep a flexible schedule. So it's all part of providing the sustainable livelihood. And then they're selecting a nettle fiber that's sustainably harvested, so that it also provides support for the forest community there. And then you can see we're holding one of the rugs. We got to see them making it. And I think this is, for both of us, this is one of our favorite things we got to see and do there.
Absolutely.
Meet the people working on the rugs, and then see the rugs. And these things are available on the Red Panda Network website.
And they're really cool.
Yeah.
One thing that I would add here as well, just as a testament to the people of Nepal, like Bill said, these women are here making these rugs by hands. In the photos below, you can see, and they have every one of the patterns memorized. And so they were hand counting as we're walking around, distracting them, talking, asking questions, making their rugs, and doing it completely by memory. It was an incredible process to see. So after Alam, we continued traveling, and finally we made it to the actual Red Panda. So it did take us about 4 days to get there. But then once we were there, we were able to stay in the same homestay in the village of Dabato for 3 days. A really cool opportunity here to be able to walk around the town, see where some of the villagers lived, and then also see one of the Planta Red Panda nurseries. Bill, do we have a photo of the nursery later on?
Yeah, so we
Okay,
have a
okay. I didn't
photo
know
of
if
the
I should
big
get too deep
nursery.
into it, but
Yeah.
but it's a very cool opportunity that they have to grow natural seeds that are beneficial to red pandas. And not only do they take, historically they do rhododendron, white oak, and bamboo, but then also they had started collecting red panda scat and using that as fertilizer and in their beds. And then from the seeds that the red pandas had eaten, they started having, I believe, 3 other species of plants growing that they then have continued growing because they knew they were beneficial to the red pandas, which is just incredible. Our homestay that we stayed at was owned by Sange and Mingma, a very lovely couple who had a beautiful home that they opened up. They were the very first Red Panda Network homestay to start that process, and so they've been well established within their program. They had 2 buildings. You can see them there. The one behind us in the photo was kind of like the main living space. It had a dining room, it had the kitchen, it had the fuel efficient stove, which we'll see in just a second. And then the building on the left was more of a housing building, and that was exclusively for travelers. Sange and Mingma lived in the main house, and then we all stayed in the room on the left and had pretty basic accommodations, but very nice. And we were so grateful to have their support and have them open their homes to us in that way. You can see here one of the fuel efficient cooking stoves. We were really excited to see this because John Ball Zoo has been supporting this work for so long, helping get those added into homes, not only homestays, but also just the homes of the Nepali residents. And like Bill said before, one of the most important parts about the fuel stove is not only is it healthier for the red pandas because it requires less fuel, less wood to burn, and less bamboo that needs to be taken down, but also it's better for the community. It is healthier, it's safer, it has less smoke, less home damage, and still gives them a place that not only keeps them warm because that was the only heat source for the entire home, but also feeds them and keeps their family well fed, which is incredible.
So Red Panda Network has focused very much strategically to have the biggest impact for red pandas on building these community forests. And there are a number of national forests and protected areas that are protected by Nepal and India because we are actually working right along the border with India. And so Red Panda Network works in all 13 provinces that red pandas are native to in Nepal and focuses on those forests that are between those already protected areas. So they are managed by community members. So like our hosts at the homestay are working in the forest with Red Panda Network, doing the research, doing the ecotourism. And these provide habitat corridors for red pandas and all the other species that live in these sort of longleaf temperate forests. And this is actually one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. So, and here's a picture of it. One of the things that was really cool about being there is that you're so high up in elevation that when the clouds roll in, they roll in around you and underneath you. So we would get up in the morning and start hiking into the forest, and typically it would be clear first thing in the morning, and late morning, midday, the clouds would roll in, and you could actually see them coming in around you.
feel them as they went by you. It was
Yeah.
incredible.
Mhm.
This also not only is a photo of the community forest, but also is a photo of the path that we followed. So a good indication of the conditions that we were working in. You can just barely make it out on the bottom left corner of the photo is where we were walking through.
I think the bathroom is somewhere in there too.
Yeah, yes. We had a agreed upon spot that everybody come that way.
So this is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. And the plants that you typically see there are oaks and rhododendrons and chestnuts and magnolia. And then bamboo, which is what the red pandas eat a lot of. But one of the things I found really fascinating, having done a fair amount of work in the eastern United States and being in the Appalachians, is that these temperate forests in the mountains in Nepal are very similar to the temperate forests that you would see in Appalachia. So you can see oaks, rhododendron, chestnuts, magnolia. Those are all species that are species groups that you would expect to see in the Appalachians. Except for bamboo, which you shouldn't see a lot in the Appalachians. But there, that was really cool to see that sort of parallel biodiversity. And then some of the mammals that we saw signs of, and these are all things that Red Panda Network, is working to conserve by preserving the forest there. They're preserving the forest for these other species. So leopard cat, golden cat, clouded leopard. We commonly saw footprints and scat from common leopards where we were walking. One of our friends that we were with encountered a tyra, which is a large predatory weasel that lives in the area that happened to be visiting the bathroom at the same time she was. And they do a lot of work with camera traps and documenting this biodiversity. And we were really excited they were able to get Dole, which is an Asiatic wild dog, on camera trap. They were doing a demo camera trap for us while we were there. And the next day we got the images, and we got these really cool images of, what was it, 3 or 4?
A whole pack of them. It was incredible to see. They were
And
so curious about the camera too. You could see them. They're coming up and sniffing it and looking all around it. It was such a cool.
Yeah. At one point, they bit it and tried to pull it off the tree. Maybe they're doing some camera trapping somewhere.
They have dole in Australia?
No, that's a different species. That's a dingo.
It's a dole. Oh, a dingo. Okay.
Yeah. But we did see, like in our bird list that Naresh was keeping, and we got to see were 49 species of birds, which was really exciting. And probably the cutest one was this little masked owlet that the picture is here, looking at us. That was actually waiting in the same waiting spot that we were in for our red panda encounter.
The cool thing about the little owlet too is this is a view from the front, but we also got to see behind him, which had the masking of eyes and beak as well. So it was a very cool sight to be able to see how his camouflage helped him too.
So our daily routine while we were up in this area was to hike to this spot here and wait until some of the forest guardians came across a red panda. So if they came across sign of a red panda or a red panda itself, they would signal to our colleagues with Red Panda Network, and then we would hike to that spot. And we did our first day there. We spent 3 days out in the forest in this spot, just building some camaraderie with our colleagues. And one of the first day when we got that red panda call, we had to hike up the mountain, and it was really exciting to see a red panda, but it is something different to hike up a mountain at that elevation. It really kind of kicked our butts, to be honest about it.
It brought me to tears, if I'm being completely honest. It was a very, very rough hike. And to Bill's point, we would hike in a mile or two every day just to get to that spot and then wait. And then we would be with our guides in our group, but they had the forest guardians who would go out ahead of us looking for the red pandas. they'd radio back, and then we'd all go running. And it's at that running time that, yes, it got very, very difficult. But ultimately, it was so worth it because we got to see a wild red panda, which was incredible.
Yep. So this is actually a picture of the red panda that we got to see, that we took while we were there. So we worked, there were a lot of people there working with Red Panda Network, just getting a chance to view these pandas. So, and that ecotourism helps support the conservation of the forest that's there. And it's really exciting to see one in the wild after all these years of seeing them in zoos. Mm-hmm.
They also have very strict parameters around who is going into those community forests. They do have permits that folks are supposed to get. We learned that doesn't always necessarily happen, but the Red Panda Network tries to be really intentional about that. They also don't ever spend more than 15 to 20 minutes watching a red panda before they will then move on, as to not interact too much with the red pandas, making sure that they have their space. And then also, if they see a red panda on the move or like babies, they will never follow them back towards their mom, just to make sure that they have the privacy and security that they need, and protecting them from us, essentially.
They also have large portions of the year where they do not do these tours because that's the breeding season and they don't want to disrupt the pandas. It was really, we actually started sleeting when our 15 minutes was up. So I felt like
Time to go.
I can't prove that Red Panda Network doesn't control that, but.
Oh. Did we? Oh, okay. Not sure what happened. Sorry about that. After our 3 days in Dobato, we had the opportunity to go to a different homestay in a city of Kalpukari. I shouldn't say city, a village of Kalpukari. And that homestay, excuse me, was right on the border of India and Nepal. In fact, on our walk there, we passed the Indian border and were able to kind of, do the 2 feet in each side deal. But because there is such strict immigration laws and, things that they were concerned about, we were encouraged not to cross the border further into India and instead stayed pretty much exclusively in Nepal. But in this, you can see Wang Chu pointing right now in this photo at where we were at the time. And Nepal is actually in the white area behind us. And we were so close that this whole green area of the map is the Indian area. There was a lake that, lake's next. The homestay that we stayed at, and this location was obviously, as you can see by the photo here, we added a sticker, but also was supported by several different wildlife organizations, not only Red Panda Network, the Pangolin Project, there was just a lot of different groups that came through and were supported. This one was a little bit more of a shop, I would say. Would you agree, Bill, that they had the opportunity in this homestay, people could come in, they had so many travelers following along kind of that India-Nepal border, that they would sell drinks, alcoholic drinks, rice, noodles, pasta, meals, things like that for travelers as they were coming through. We also were able to stay there for a couple of days, ate with their family, enjoyed their fuel efficient stove before then moving on. This is a view of the village of Kalpukari. This is pretty standard for most of the mountain villages that we went through. They had relatively small populations. Kalpukari was a little bit larger, but Dobato, I think they said there were like 13 people that lived in town. Very, very small. But you can see the conditions that they were living in here. And then Kalpukari actually means Black Lake in Nepali or Indian. I'm not sure which one it was now that I say that, but Kal means black and Kari, I guess, means lake. And so this was the Black Lake. It is technically on the Indian side of the border, but you can see it very well kept. They also have a lot of prayer flags around that. Again, like I mentioned before, they consider water to be very holy and sacred. So similar to the river in Kathmandu, Kal Lake was a sacred spot to them as well. And while we were at this homestay, we had the opportunity to take off very early one morning and view the sunrise over the Himalayas, and over the image here is of the Mount Kanchenjunga range, excuse me. And then this is another photo after the sun had come up. We had the opportunity to go to an unfinished construction operation, and we were on the third floor of a building that did not have walls or a ceiling, and so it was just open cement and rebar. And there were probably, I don't know, 30 other people in addition to our group that were all on this rooftop just watching the sunrise, and it was such a magical and beautiful experience to see, especially coming from somewhere like Michigan where we don't have any mountains, but America in general, coming there it was just an incredible experience. The rides were a little bit less incredible. You can see on the left a photo that Phil took of inside one of the Jeeps. We took, they were old Range Rovers or Land Rovers, actually, that they would take up the mountains. And we had some incredible drivers who were very confident and competent in what they were doing. But the road conditions were really rough. You can see on the right, how quick and close that drop off is, and each road just switched back through that. And as somebody who gets pretty motion sick or car sick, it was quite the adventure.
Yeah. And then after that, the next day we traveled downhill and then up another mountain to a little town called Jabari, which is where Planted Red Panda Home's largest nursery is. They have small nurseries pretty much in all of these communities where they're doing work. But this is the large sort of main nursery. And because we've had such a close relationship with them and supporting this program, they wanted to show us this. And so we were really excited to get a chance to see this in person. It is a community-run nursery, so the decisions about the nursery are made by a community group with Red Panda. And it's and the people in that committee are people that work at the nursery and live in Jubari. So it was really cool. They gave us, we had a ceremony welcoming us, and they really reported that after they put this nursery in and started replanting this and replacing what used to be livestock rearing as their main source of income, and replacing some of that with the Planted Red Panda Home nursery there, they were seeing a return to nature. They mentioned that it was greener there than it had been before. They're seeing species that they hadn't seen before. And the work that they do is pretty incredible. Like they were reporting that they produce about 35,000 seedlings every year. They've planted over, they are on track to plant 1 million trees by this year. So they're planning that this year will be the year that they plant 1 million trees throughout habitat in Nepal for red pandas and all the other species that use these forests. They're all native plants, and they do a ton of research. So Megan mentioned before that, they know a lot about what red pandas eat by collecting scat in the wild and then rearing the seeds that come out of that. And so that helps inform what they grow at the nurseries and what they use to restore the forest. So the red pandas themselves are actually choosing the plants that are getting planted back in these restoration habitats. Another thing they were working on too is they were, rearing some seeds that have been through red pandas as scat, and some that weren't. And they definitely were finding that the plants that had been processed by red pandas were germinating at a better rate than the ones that weren't germinated by red pandas. So it's a really it's a really cool program. I was really excited to see it. One of the things that we were really blown away about, and this was actually by chance, we ran into some school kids while we were traveling that had Red Panda Network logoed backpacks and different things on them. And so we were talking to the Red Panda Network staff, and they were telling us that one of their biggest programs is that they have a school stipend. There's a Red Panda Network scholarship program that's partially need and partially merit based. And students get a stipend, they get textbooks, they get school supplies, and then the participating schools get conservation curriculum from Red Panda Network. So sometimes that's them providing the curriculum. Sometimes it's actually Red Panda staff coming and doing the teaching. And this has been going on for a long time. So they're actually building the next generation of Red Panda conservationists. And I think one of the things that was really exciting talking to our Red Panda Network colleagues, Nareesh, who's kind of in the front of that photo there, getting to talk to him was one of our favorite things about being on the trip. I think both of us really enjoyed getting to spend time and meet Nareesh. He's currently in New Zealand working on his master's, doing conservation work that will actually be with red pandas in Nepal. But Nareesh is a grade school student that was a Red Panda Network scholarship, helped him get to college, went through college, and now he works for Red Panda Network, and now he's moving on to do his master's degree in conservation. So you can really see how that program is paying off.
He's just one of many too. And one thing that Bill had mentioned about the school program, not only do they support the kids who are in that grade going through their program, but if they have siblings who are younger than them, they will also support them in their education and making sure that they get adequate school supplies as well, which I thought was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, here's our ceremony.
Yeah, this is just a picture of the ceremony. So this is all the staff that works at the community forest welcoming us and showing off their nursery there. And they were telling us, several of them gave little speeches about what it meant to them and what they'd seen the difference for the nursery being in the community. They also gave us flowers, and it was just like a wonderful experience getting to see it. Mm-hmm.
These also are the people who live in the town of Jabari as well. And so it was cool to see them not only as community residents, but also family members coming together and all working together to move things forward for red pandas and also improving their community. And you could see the difference that it was making.
This is a picture of the nursery itself. And I threw this in here because you can see on the right-hand side of that photo, you've got sort of that bare area there with not a lot of ground cover. And then sort of in the middle of that photo, it gets much more lush. There's a fence there. And so inside the fence is actually the nursery and where they've been doing restoration. And outside the fence is the kind of damage that they were seeing with the livestock that roam free in the area. So they were telling us that they do see red pandas now in this forest. The day we were there, they were talking about they had just found evidence of common leopards walking through the nursery right where we were. So they're definitely seeing a return of the natural community into this community.
Mm-hmm. Finally, we did have to make our way back to Kathmandu, although we were having such an incredible time. And Kathmandu is home to the Red Panda Network headquarters. So it was a great opportunity that we could go and see where their leadership are working. We were actually able to meet with their president or executive director, and he was so sweet, so accommodating, and willing to share, wanting to collaborate. So it was a great opportunity there. We also were able to see some of the partnerships that they were doing. They shared with us their annual report. They shared with us about some collaborations they were doing with some other organizations supporting them, like a beer that was being made for red panda conservation, and also told us about future events they were planning, which they did a race for Earth Day that they just completed, which was really incredible. And we got to learn more about their community-based conservation. So like we've already talked about the community forest and creating sustainable livelihoods, not only for their staff in Kathmandu, but also for each person who works for them in each of the small villages and communities. And in the example of Lake Jabari, that is the operation for, or the industry for the village. There, what you could either be a farmer or you could work for Red Panda Network, and so they're actively changing the lives of the people in that town. Additionally, forest guardians, always working with them, going out and actually helping track and find the red pandas. And one of the interesting things is that some of those forest guardians actually were former trappers or people hunting red pandas or trying to catch red pandas. They had then been educated by Red Panda Network on why that's problematic and what they were doing to the environment and to the species, and now work with Red Panda using those same skills that they have, but for good instead. So helping them track them, helping them identify them, but also keeping their distance, not collecting them, not killing them in any way. In addition to our eco trip, they do regular eco trips with several different groups. They do them based on community, which is kind of the one that we went on, or for zoos specifically, which are a little bit more intense, but are based around zoo employees. So people like your keepers who are hands-on working with the animals, that's what that trip would be based for. And then the restoration and so much research that they're doing, not only on red pandas, but also the other species, the dholes, the leopards, the birds that they're seeing, because like Bill said, the community forest not only is helping red pandas, but by helping red pandas, they're helping all of the animals in that area. We had pretty varying accommodations throughout our trip. They were all very rustic, I would say. Some places had bathrooms, some did not. Some had toilets, some had squat toilets. Most of the places that we stayed specifically on our homestays did not have heat. So you can see that's a photo of one of the room on the left is a room that Bill stayed in, and Urian, who is from I almost said Nepal, from the Netherlands, who shared a room with him on that stop. The walls are pretty thin. The windows are also pretty thin. They get pretty foggy with all of the steam because it gets hot, or it gets cold, excuse me. But they provided beds for us. They provided pillows. They always had places for us to use the restroom and places to feed us. Oh, I thought this was food, but road conditions also were very interesting and just a different experience than being what we're accustomed to in America. On the left, you'll see driving through, I'm not sure where exactly that is, probably Kathmandu or something like that.
That's by the hotel.
Oh, it's by the hotel. Okay, so the roads are in Kathmandu more well maintained. They are generally paved. They do have stoplights. They do have traffic monitoring or directing by police officers, but also it's pretty hectic. That's not too bad of a photo, but there were times where we were just in a line of, hundreds of cars all slowly merging their way in. A lot of motorcycles, people zipping around, things like that. And then once we got out of the city and more into the country and working our way into the community forest, the roads were pretty rough. And like I said before, it was a lot of switchbacks, a lot of mountain edges. And in the case of their rainy season, they experienced a lot of landslides. And so we saw a lot of evidence of road work being done, not only to improve or fix the roads that had damage, but also to prevent future landslides. They were building drainage tunnels, they were building rock walls, they were doing things to help that be more sustainable. But there were multiple times like this where our Land Rover would pull up upon a tractor or machine, working on the roads, and we would have to wait for them to clear whatever was in the road, whatever was in the way. At one point, there was a giant hole that they had to then fill so that we could drive over. It was a very interesting experience. The food was incredible. I think that was one of the highlights for sure, was just being able to try all of the different food from their culture. Um, Most traditionally, we had the meal that was on the top left. That was probably our meal for most homestay dinners as well as homestay lunches. It was the same meal every time, but it was delicious. It had dal bhat is what it was called, and it had always rice and always some sort of a lentil or bean soup, and then usually some sort of accoutrements to go with that. So whether it was like in the image on the left, you'll see there's a little bit of like a fried potato, some mustard greens that had been cooked down, some pickled vegetables. I think that's maybe some kind of squash or turnip or something as well, and then a little bit of sauce. And you kind of would mix it all together, pour your soup right on it, kind of eat it however you want, and it was very good. And then momos were their version of a dumpling, and were a crowd favorite as well. In the top photo, you can see us learning to make them at our homestay, excuse me, in Kalpukari. That is our standing up here. This is our homestay host. She was wonderful, and she spent the evening teaching us not only how to make momos, but then cooking them for us so we could enjoy. And it was a great time, a lot of fun to learn. And then the two bottom photos are just other food that we were able to experience and try. This is when we went out to eat in Kathmandu. We were actually at a restaurant, so these are served from their kitchen. And then this is the kitchen and dining room of our first homestay in Dobato. So this is where they would cook the food here, and you can see some of like the package. They used a lot of packaged noodles, packaged rice, packaged things, because they are so far removed that it's hard to get a lot of fresh things, as well as they don't have refrigeration. And then this is where we would eat all together, having our dal bhat. So from the ecotourism perspective, which is really why I was there, my role was to evaluate, is this something that we could feasibly bring back to John Ball Zoo and continue on as a program? There were many pros and some cons as well, but the biggest experience, or the biggest pro for me, was connecting to the Red Panda Network, getting to know Naresh and Wang Chu and Prabeen. They were truly the highlight of the trip, getting to know the people and getting to learn from them. They were so experienced and had so much expertise in not only red pandas, but also Nepali culture, other animals within, their areas, even the biodiversity, or learning about, the flora to go along with the fauna. They had all of that down too. It was a great bonding experience for Bill, and I will be friends forever after going to that, as well as everybody else there that we were able to meet without knowing who we were going into the trip with. It was kind of up in the air, but they were incredible. The other guests who were there with us, they were eager and excited and ready to learn, and just the kindest, sweetest people. Some of the cons that we experienced were the travel time to get there. It did take us about 4 days once in country to get to the point of being able to see red pandas, and an additional 2 days before that just to get to Nepal. So about 5 to 6 days of traveling to get there, and then around 4 days to travel to get back. So that was quite a long process. The accommodations, as we saw in the photos, were pretty rustic. We were well equipped because we had sleeping bags and had prepared, and Red Panda Network had provided us, but it was still more than we had expected. There was no electricity, no Wi-Fi, no heat, no bathroom in a lot of spaces, and it was I think fun to learn and experience, but also a little bit daunting to learn and experience.
Type 2 fun.
Type 2 fun, yes, exactly. Yeah, the adventure fun. And but there were also mornings when we woke up and our eyelashes were frozen because it was so cold, and you had to run to the heat to get warmed up. And so it certainly is not a trip that would be for the faint of heart, I would say. And then the last con that I would really point out is similar and not for the faint of heart is the strenuous hikes. Both Bill and I spent several months beforehand hitting the gym and working out, and whether it was a stair stepper or elliptical or whatever, just working on not only building up our endurance, but also our lung capacity and strength. And even with that, both of us, I think I can speak for you, Bill, when saying that
Yeah.
we
Oh,
were
yeah.
pretty winded. It was every day your head hit that pillow really hard.
Mhm.
And in fact, there was a day where it was supposed to be a rest day, and some folks said like, "Hey, since we're just resting, can we go out?" But I made and Bill, both of us made the decision that we're gonna just stay back and relax. I think because
Yep.
it had been a lot, and it was
Mhm.
pretty darn
Mhm.
strenuous. And just being in that elevation, it gives a different
Mhm.
level of oxygen, so you're breathing a little bit differently, and then also you're extenuating yourself too. So for future possibilities, we have not ruled it out. Even with those cons, we still think that it's a great experience and would be worth finding those type 2 people potentially who might be interested in that kind of adventure, or looking at different locations. So we also do a lot of work with monarch conservation at John Bull Zoo. So we've also said maybe if Nepal and red pandas aren't the best fit, maybe Mexico City and monarchs could, or what other areas are we already actively working with that people might be interested in going to. There was enough excitement and potential there that we think that we could still have a very cool, robust ecotourism program for our community.
Yep. And so, like Megan said, this really reinforced our commitment to Red Panda Network. We definitely saw, and to me, that was one of the most exciting things about the trip was just seeing like how exemplary their community-based conservation is.
And it
Um,
was.
it, yeah.
It was just incredible.
Mhm. And then we were able to coordinate and do some coordinated blogs with Red Panda Network through our social media reach. And we'll continue to support Plant a Red Panda Home and fuel efficient cooking stoves. Um, Last year, we did work with one of the animal department team members and myself worked with some others at other zoos to help found Red Panda Safe. Or I'm sure some of you have probably heard of the AZA's new big conservation priority as saving animals from extinction is what SAFE stands for. And the idea is to take the collaborative resources that AZA zoos have to have an impact for specific species in the wild. So there is now a red panda safe that is focusing on different aspects of conservation in Nepal. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot to them about is that they are working with Red Panda Network to develop to help support vaccination clinics and do them more efficiently in Nepal. So use some of the veterinary expertise at the AZA zoos to do these vaccination clinics where they're vaccinating some of the feral dogs for distemper and rabies to reduce that risk to red pandas in the wild. So we're right now working on a plan where some of our veterinary staff will be visiting with Red Panda Network in 2026 to help do some vaccination work with and potentially neutering dogs in Nepal. And so that's pretty much what we had to share today. We thank everybody for joining us. I did throw up the Red Panda Network website there. Obviously we're eager to have folks support John Ball Zoo, but also we want to point out our partners at Red Panda Network. And there's lots of opportunities to purchase rugs or donate to Red Panda Network or just find out what they're doing. And these eco tour trips are available out there. That's what they do. And now you have a really realistic idea of what those tours look like. But we wanted to open it up for questions if anybody has any.
And also while we're waiting, you can see an adorable photo of the red pandas that we have at John Ball Zoo.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, well, I was gonna say that's mom, dad, and a baby, but
I think that is Wasabi and two
And
of the
two
little ones.
babies. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, the reverse. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
We've been fortunate enough to have 5 cubs during our red panda habitat at John Ball Zoo. So over the past since 2017, we have been able to welcome and then send out 5 different cubs as well.
Okay, looks like Pat has a question.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation, you guys. That was terrific. I've actually been to John Ball Zoo and I just loved it. Now I know more about it, so that's awesome. I'm curious, you said that there were common leopards. So you're talking
Mhm.
leopards, right?
Mhm.
Big birds. I mean, do they eat red pandas? I mean, what
I-
are like what
Mhm.
are the besides people, what is the biggest threat to and habitat? Are there animals that are eating red pandas? Or like what are the leopards eating?
Yeah, well, the leopards are probably they're probably a significant predator of red pandas. But that, I mean, that is sort of a natural part of the system there. And so the biggest threats to them really are those anthropogenetic threats. So climate change, habitat loss. They are a species that is susceptible to, getting into the pet trade. That has decreased with the laws that are on the books in the last 20 or 30 years or so. There is poaching of red pandas. There's also been some traditional hunting. There's some, both in Nepal and in China. I know there are some sort of traditional ceremonies that involve red panda pelts. That they've reduced a lot of that pressure over the last 20 or 30 years. So it's really climate change and habitat loss.
Human intervention more than anything. Right?
Mhm.
Any other questions? Thank you.
There are also, I put some pictures on there just to show off, so we can go through some pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's an aerial view of Kathmandu. So the Buddha Stupa, which is is actually the biggest Buddha temple in Kathmandu, is just a few blocks from our house or from our hotel. So we spent a fair amount of time walking around that and looking at it.
Walking around it an odd number of times specifically. We
Yes.
learned that is
Mm-hmm.
really how they do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bhaktapur,
Yeah. This
Himalaya.
is, yeah, the Himalayas from the plane. We,
One thing I was going to share is that one of the and maybe more comical experiences we had is that just about anybody you asked which mountain in the Himalayas is Mount Everest would you give you a different answer. So we definitely saw Mount Everest, but I don't know that we could say specifically which peak it is because everybody told us something different. But it was just the angle you were at and how you were looking at it. And
yeah. There was one flight attendant that I think actually knew and was pointing it out. And when she was pointing it out, it was behind a cloud.
perfect.
Mhm.
One
And
really nice thing, speaking of flights as well, that we didn't mention is we handled all of our flights getting to Nepal and home. But once we were in country, Red Panda Network handled every single thing for us, from paying for our meals, paying for our in-country flights, paying for our taxi rides, making sure that we had accommodations, making sure that our rides were ready, making sure that we had the dinner reservations that we needed. They covered every detail perfectly. This is the
yeah.
view from Alam. Was this when we were up top as well?
Yeah, well, they have right next to the homestay we were in. There was just like a viewing tower that you could climb up and take pictures of and see the sunrise and sunset. So we went up there and took a few pictures of the valleys around Alam. And this is just the night sky and Kalpokari. Once you got up there, there's not a lot of light pollution. So if there weren't cloud cover, which was not all that frequently, the night sky was just stunning.
Incredible.
You do see this sort of Tibetan script written on rocks all over, and that sometimes can be modern Tibetan script, and sometimes it can be ancient Tibetan script. Some of these places that we were visiting, especially in Kathmandu, were built and in the 4th century. And then this is actually probably modern Tibetan script written on a rock, and this is just like right on one of the roads we were walking in the community forest.
Just walked by.
This is just a view of Kalpokari when we were walking in. One side of that stone wall is India, and the other side is Nepal. That's a red panda.
Just for good measure. And that is the actual end of our photos.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you so much for
If you think of any questions or people would like more info, please feel free to share our contact info or have folks reach out to John Ball Zoo. We'd be happy to chat more.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you, Joanne, for organizing this. I think it's really interesting to see what, for our members to see what's happening at the AZA level of trying to involve these different organizations. We don't always have, access to that information. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for, especially a Memorial Day weekend, being willing to join us. We're so grateful.
Yeah, everybody have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.